I would start this out to say simply, everything is about leading us to God. That's what life is about. Okay? So everything is structured so that we come to know God. So in the mind of the church, there's two ways of knowing about God. One, what we call revelation. Okay? Supernatural revelation. That is the prophets, our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay? In other words, Scripture and the tradition of the church, with a capital T. The other is what we call natural revelation. That's, in a certain sense, what I'm going to be talking about today, natural revelation. So, we go into what we call the economy of salvation. Okay? The economy of salvation. Economy is a word that means household. Echo, is a Greek word that means the household. An economy is how does the household work? Okay, how does a household work? Well, the house we live in right now, this universe, was set up, it works in a way to reveal God to us through natural things. So if you start looking around the world, the world will lead you to get to know about God. Okay? It reveals His mystery. Okay? So, and that is, on the other side of that, is you have a world that is made to see God in. The other side of that is your potential to know God. Okay, so the conscience, the person, is made to know good and evil. And inside you, you have a natural law that reigns inside you that says to yourself, do good and avoid evil. Everyone has that. No human being doesn't have that capacity in them to desire to do good and to avoid evil. Okay? So, how can we have evil? How can we have evil? Choice. In the end, evil ends up a choice. In order for a conscience to have done something wrong, they have to have chosen an evil over a good. Someone who doesn't know why they do something, when they do it, say I'm playing with a gun and there's a little target over there and I'm shooting at the target. Okay, say someone, without me knowing, goes behind the target, I shoot, I kill them. I did an evil, right? Objectively, an evil occurred. But I didn't intend to do that. And since I didn't intend to do that, I'm not guilty of that. Because I never intended to do it. The conscience is like that. It's something that has to choose a good or choose an evil. Okay? And so there's a responsibility in conscience. If I saw someone messing around behind the target, and I continue to shoot at the target, and I kill someone, now I'm guilty. Why? Because there would have kicked in something inside me to say, that person is more important than the fun I'm having target shooting. So I need to, it's an obligation that I put on myself. I need to be careful as if I'm going to use this gun. So I can't continue to shoot. because it would put someone in danger. And I would be guilty if I did that. Okay? So that's just natural to every person. Okay, so the person is made for the good. He's capable of doing things he should not do. Now, in that, when God made man, He made him to know, love, and serve Him, and be with Him forever in heaven. Okay, so that's our catechesis. Natural law is that law that God puts inside us to use reason to figure out what is good and what is evil. Okay, and it's a natural. It's really put forward by the commandments. Today's reading, where the Lord starts to go through what are the commandments that a person needs to do to get to heaven. As we talked about that, we note that the Lord said, "You already know this. You know the commandments. Do this, 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 this." What He's pointing at there is that those commandments that He says in the gospel today are naturally on our hearts. He's saying, you already know this. Even if you don't know the Old Testament, you already know this. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother. You know that. How do you know that? It's innate. It's innate. Innate means you're born with it. It's part of human nature. Because man is a moral being. Okay? Where if you start to describe what the human person is, he's a rational creature. Okay? That he has a capacity to do logic. So 1 plus 1 is 3. Right? Wrong. The reason you know that that's wrong is because you have a natural capacity to follow reason. So if I say 1 and 1 is 20, it conflicts with your mind. It's a conflict. Because you know the concept of 1, and when you put 1 twice, and you know what the concept of 2 is, and then when I say the concept 20, you immediately say, that's not reasonable. Why? Because you have a rational nature, the capacity to follow reason. Like it, you have a moral reason. Okay? You have moral reason. It's also innate. Okay? So if I say, it's okay to murder, you just, what? By your very nature, you know that that's not true. It's innate. So as a moral creature, you have a natural capacity to say, this is good, and that's evil. Okay? Other creatures aren't like that. If I have a kitty cat outside, and he sees a little mouse running across the yard, and he goes and he grabs it, and he tortures it a little bit playing with it, and then he kills it, and he drops it at your doorstep, which sometimes cats do. He doesn't go crawl off in a corner and say, I killed that poor mouse. Gosh, I feel so bad that I killed that mouse. No, he's happy as a lark because his natural instinct was to catch things. And even to bring it maybe to the head cat or whatever it was. Right? Lay it down at their feet. right? He doesn't go through that. He doesn't have that moral conscience. Okay, so what is conscience? What is conscience? Conscience is to look in a mirror, to make yourself the object of your reflection. Okay, so if I have a book and I look at it and I read it, it says, what my son, what son of my womb, what son of my vows, da, 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 da. So I look at this and it's the object of my consciousness. Human beings have the very special capacity to make themselves the object of their conscience. Okay, so instead of looking at something outside of themselves, they put themselves in front of their, they what we call reflect, and that's why I say it's like looking in a mirror. You look at yourself and you reflect, you look at your own reflection. You're making yourself the object of your attention. Again, no other creature does this. There are no other creatures that look at themselves and judge themselves. Okay, so we look at what we did, and we say that is wrong. Okay, so that, or that is good. So that's one of the things that we start to talk about what conscience does. Conscience is when I've made myself an object of my reflection, my own object, and I judge that good or evil. That's one of the reasons why there is such a thing as merit. Okay, the church teaches that there's merit. Okay, so when I look at a good act, and I recognize that I was the one who did that good act. I was hungry one day, and I went out to McDonald's, and I got myself, a McSandwich, something. And as I was driving out, I saw a homeless person out there, and I said, I'm in a hurry, and I'm hungry, but this guy, he looks hungry. So I drive up to him, I say, hey, you hungry, man? And he's like, yeah. I say, here, take my McMuffin. And you drive off. You, as you look at your own action, can be very happy about that. In fact, you're naturally happy about that. It creates happiness to have done that. Why? Because you've made yourself the object, and just like when you look at anything else that's good, and you say, that's beautiful, I see a flower or a rose, and you say, that's beautiful. Well, there's a physical beauty thing. When I look at my own moral action, and I say, I gave that guy a sandwich, and I denied myself. What you're looking at is moral beauty. And it makes you happy to see moral beauty. Because you're made to spot it. You're made to spot moral beauty. That's when if you see somebody else give that mixed sandwich to the guy, it also gives you joy to have seen someone who did something good. Okay? When you see that moral good, what you're seeing is a reflection of God. Okay? Because your capacity to do a moral good comes from your image of God. You are the image of God. And God, being good, is capable of doing many good things and has done many good things. When you choose to do that good thing, you're looking at the image of God that God put in you. That's why he still gets the credit. He still gets the credit because he was the one who put that in you. But you get part of the credit because you were the one who chose to fulfill what you found inside yourself. And so your freedom makes it so that you have merit for what you did, and that good thing was there. That question?
So what the church would refer to as co-redemption? Or?
It would be, okay, this is even at a natural level. Okay? So we're not talking yet about supernatural grace. This is just a natural capacity of man to reflect God. Okay? That's why when the church starts to talk about those who are saved in the Second Vatican Council, the church talks about you can only be saved through Christ. Okay? And so there was one of the councils put out the phrase, extra ecclesia nullit salvit. Outside the church, no one is saved. Okay? So that phrase became a big bone of contention because when we started to look at what about the pygmy in the jungle in Africa, can that person get to heaven? They've never even heard of Christ. Can they get to heaven? Okay, how do you square that with predestination as the church understands it, which is every single person is made to know, love, and serve God and is given, and by their very nature is going to be given the opportunity to get to heaven. No one who is ever born in the history of the world, or will be in the history of the world, is excluded from the possibility of going to heaven. Because that would simply be not fair. God's fair. So for him to make someone and condemn them to hell, even before they've done any actions, that would be contrary to who God is. So every person, no matter where they are, who they are, is capable of reaching heaven. So the pygmy, what happens with the pygmy? He never heard of Jesus. He never will hear of Jesus. What's the thing? Okay, so the church looks at that situation and says, well, the boundaries of the church, the visible boundaries of the church, are those who are baptized. Okay? The visible boundaries of the church are those who are baptized. Because Christ said, go, baptize in the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach. Okay? 3 types of baptism. Okay? Baptism of water, baptism of desire, and baptism of blood. Okay? Those are the 3 types of baptism. So how is this pygmy going to get to heaven? He would probably fall under the baptism of desire. At some point, because he's a moral creature with a natural capacity to know of God and to be directed towards God, there will be decisions in his life somewhere along the way where he says, I choose this good over evil as my decision of who I'm going to be, what I'm going to be. That would be a person who's probably in the church, but not inside the visible boundaries of the church. In other words, there's some invisible boundary of the church that we don't know where it is. And people, like the pygmy, are mysteriously inside that. Why? Because God gave him the grace to know the good that he's even spotted in himself, the reflection of God that he sees in himself, and he chooses that somehow, a baptism of desire. Now, does that mean we don't have to be baptized? No. You need baptism to get the grace. God doesn't need baptism to give the grace. He can give the grace to anybody he wants. So he's not limited by those structures that he made himself. Yes?
I can understand the pygmy situation. What I'm having trouble with is you were describing conscious and natural law.
Yeah.
Looking at our culture and our society where we moved to the point where we have atheists and agnostics who say, I can reflect in that mirror and see that I'm a good person. And I don't need religion. Religion is not necessary. How does that?
I would put it this way, and this is what the church teaches: no one can be good without the grace of God. You just can't do it. You claim to do it, but you don't do it. Say, for example, you've read the Lord of the Rings. You know why they use? At least this is my reflection on Lord of the Rings. You know why they have the 9 wraths? The wraths, the 9 Nazgul or whatever they call them. Okay, because it is 1 short of 10. They're men who think themselves perfect, but they are falling short of that 10th commandment. There is no one who can say, I know what they mean by God, and I reject that. I'm on my own. That person is not capable of ultimately doing good. Because they're denying that any goodness of themselves comes from God. And by that very fact are already doing the sin of pride. They're not recognizing the source of their own goodness. And they're consciously refusing it. Okay? They're consciously refusing it. Now, in the end, it's not for us to judge any particular person. So there's a thing called invincible ignorance. Invincible ignorance. So you might have this person who grows up in a communist country, and all they've ever heard about Christians is that they're just hypocrites and this and that. And all they heard all their life was that people who believe in God are murderers and adulterers and this and that. And, priests do this and these guys do this. And it's only us who, trying to follow reason, are the only ones who do good. Okay. Is that person lying to themselves when they do that? That's up to God. Okay? They might have grown up in a place where they had no way, because of the cultural influences and all the influences around them, to ever come to a true knowledge of what, say, God is, because of the warped society around them. We would say that in general, they have to, at some point, say, this is good. Okay? So even the atheist might somehow recognize that there's a good bigger than himself. He has to go through that position. What kind of name does he put on it? Who knows? Okay, so it's never for us to judge any particular person. We can judge ideas, but we shouldn't judge a person. Okay? So, like, We don't necessarily say that Stalin is a... That's just not for me to say. Stalin killed maybe 100 million people. I don't know why he did that. I can say that was wrong. I can say about Lenin's ideas, that's wrong. Because I can go through and I can analyze and say, that's wrong, this is wrong, here's a fallacy, here's a fallacy. But I don't know why he came to that conclusion. I don't know what information he did or didn't have. Only God knows that. And that's why God's the judge of individuals. I have to be the judge of the ideas that are presented to me. That's up to me. So that's why I can say to, who knows, the person at the abortion clinic who's doing the abortion, you're doing an evil. And here's the reasons. Boom, 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 boom. But I can say you're doing an evil, but I can't say you're going to hell. I don't know that. I don't know why they're doing these things. I can't imagine how that works because it's contrary to my very nature. See, it's a total contradiction. It's 2 and 2 is 20. And what? In other words, when you start getting to that point, you're talking about the irrational. It's irrational. And it's bordering on insanity. Okay? It's bordering on insanity. And the reality is, our country is bordering on insanity. Actually.
I think across the border already.
Yeah, I mean, we're bordering on insanity when we say lots of natural things that we just know are true. The marriage is between a man and a woman. Okay, that's just rationality. If anybody understands plumbing, you understand that a man and woman are the only ones who can form a family. That's just rational. Why this person makes this decision that they think that it's something else, I have no idea. But what I do know is it's irrational. Okay? And if they were rational, they would come to the same conclusion as me. So I have to assume, if I can assume, I have to assume that there's something wrong in their structure of thinking that is contrary to nature. Okay? It's contrary to the nature of man. And I was out in California a couple weeks ago for a 60th wedding anniversary of my godmother. And one of my cousins had married an actor. And we were going out looking at some things in San Diego. We got some conversations, and we were talking about actors. And he said, "Oh yeah, there's," and somehow we got the subject of gays in the acting world. And there's lots of gays in the acting world. He said, "Yeah, there's probably 70%, is what he said. I said, "Really?" "Yeah." He said, and this is what he said. He said, those people, you can give up everything that they demand, and I'll secure you this: they will never be happy. No matter what you concede to them, they will never be happy. Well, that's a really interesting phrase. Because remember what I said makes us happy? To see the good. I see this good moral action that I do, and I'm like, I'm happy, I'm joyful that I did that. Why are they not happy? Why can they not be made happy? Because the path they're on is not a path that will lead to happiness. Because it's not a reflection of God. It's not a reflection on God. Okay? See, there's where natural law comes into play. Yes?
Just a comment. You don't have to address this now. Just maybe at some other time. I recently read a book called The Anxious Age, and there was a statement made in there by the author